What if some of the pain you carry isn't yours alone? What if your soul volunteered to heal what generations before you could not? The truth is, we all inherit more than genetics. We inherit unspoken stories, emotional imprints, beliefs, fears, and behaviors passed down through the lines of time. Sometimes the sadness that rises in us isn't just from our own experiences. It's the echo of a great-grandmother's grief, a father's silence, or the survival instincts of those who came long before us. I'm Justin Gates, and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. I am your host, one of your hosts. I always say I'm the host, but I'm just one of the hosts. I am Justin Gates, my co-host over here in internet land somewhere. Say hi, Michael.
Hey, fam.
So this episode today, we're going to be talking about generational and ancestral wounds, traumas. And before we get really into it, I just want to say that this episode isn't about blame. When we talk about generational traumas or things that are from our parents or grandparents, uncles, aunts, things that are close to us, right, in generation, a lot of times people feel attacked. None of this stuff is about blame, is it?
No. I think so many people get this part confused, so it is so important to drive this point home. When we do this work, when we start seeing our patterns, what we've learned from our parents and the things we've gone through, it's like more often than not, our parents did the best job they knew how to. That or they were mentally ill. And it's not about being able to point the finger and say, you're why I messed up. It's just being able to say, hey, now I understand why I do this.
Yeah. These type of topics aren't about blame, and we don't do the blame game here, do we? We don't do the shame game either. It's about liberation. It's about finding the truth. The sacred work of awareness and compassion and clarity. Because when we begin to understand where these echoes that we carry with us, where they come from, we step in and we now have the power to transform them, right? So generational and ancestral pain are the two threads woven through the same fabric of human experience. One is closer, and I guess one would be people we've never even heard of, possibly, right? So, but they all kind of converge and shape part of our human experience. Generational trauma is generally more psychological, patterns that are learned through behaviors, upbringings, words, really family dynamics, which we've gotten into before. And ancestral trauma is more energetic. Think of it as pain in vibration form that just tends to, or even belief, right? That ripples through time in a way that we suffer from these things that we don't really have an understanding of. And that's why it makes it tough to kind of pin that part down. Generational trauma is something that most of us, I think, have a basic understanding of because we all were raised, we all grew up in these big family dynamics. The ancestral part of this isn't as common, I wouldn't say. There are a lot of people that believe in it. And if you believe in energy, you have to believe that energy can vibrate through things and not be holden to time and space.
I think back to, I was asking my mom about my great-grandparents, because I realized I knew nothing about them. And it was really cool hearing the history of them. And one of my great-grandfathers, he would jump into the river every day and swim to work, which is crazy.
Wait a minute, what?
Yeah, he would get in the river every day in the morning, and he in Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania, close to Philly, at least during the warmer months, and he would swim to work. And that may sound crazy to most people. Me, I used to walk as a kid. I would not want to take the bus. I would walk 7 miles to school. I would walk to work. I loved getting up and getting moving first thing in the morning. I always thought I was crazy. And when I heard this about my great-grandfather I knew nothing about, it's like, here's part of him inside of me showing itself in its own pattern. Now, I don't know if I got the balls to jump into a cold river first thing in the morning, but
that is awesome. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, me neither. That blew me away.
I mean, he just gets in the water and it just kind of pushes him to wherever he needs to go. He needs to go that direction.
That or he swims upstream.
Wow. That's crazy. I bet he was really strong. After
I bet so too.
I bet he could bend steel, with his bare hands. That's crazy.
Yeah, it sounded like he was a super optimistic guy too, which definitely is passed down through the generations.
So the axiom of light that's that's going to be real important for us today, because we don't blame and we don't shame, right? No one is beyond redemption. That which is corrupt takes time to reform. And this axiom will serve as the heart of this episode. It really does, and it has to, because it reminds us that healing these things that we're going to talk about today is not about judgment. It's about redemption. And because, as you said just a little while ago, generations before us, no matter how short or close to us or how far away they were from us, were often doing the best they could. And because they may have had limited awareness, or they were completely in survival all the time. A whole host of different societal pressures, right? You know, we can't hold 5 generations ago to the same standards that we have today societally, right? So some passed on pain because they didn't know how to find peace, or never had the opportunity to find peace,
I never realized peace was an option.
or that it was an even option, or they withheld love because they never really received it properly, right? So when we remember that no one is beyond redemption, we step into compassion. We step into respect and connection, right? So, and again, we're never trying to excuse harm, especially blatant acts of abuse. We never, ever will excuse that. But what we're trying to understand, this whole dynamic as a part of humanity's collective healing, maybe that's the best way for me to put it. Collective healing, unfinished healing, right? Especially through these generations and generations and generations. And you and me, all of us, we are the next step, the next continuation of that process, that ongoing unfolding of healing. So every act of self-awareness, every boundary that we draw, every truth that we speak, all of these kind of add to that goal of redemption. And I believe that this work ripples not just forward, but backwards too.
You know, right now in ethics class, we're going over relativism and cultural relativism. And when it comes down to this concept, it is that our morals, our ethics, it's all designed, whether our independent beliefs of the world and how it operates, or what we were learning within our family and societal junctures. But one thing that I found really fascinating reading about this is how, I mean, you have people living the same type of lives, working 9 to 5s, eating the same kind of food, but in each house, it is a vastly different reality on how
It
the
is.
world works.
It is. It's crazy too. It's crazy. You know, with my prior profession, I walked into a lot of different houses over those 20 years. And it was like stepping off into different worlds, right? It's like things that I would consider to be weird, it's normal, or things that I thought were normal was weird to them. Even as a kid, you know, and as more of a kid, when you go into these new houses for the first time, it's such a culture shock, isn't it? And it doesn't even matter if what eth, what race,
Ethnicity or
yeah, doesn't matter what race, doesn't matter what culture. Every house, as you said, seemed like it was just a whole new world. Like people just don't do things the same way, which I always thought was so bizarre.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to this whole generational experience.
Mm-hmm.
It is us as we grow up, we are bringing in the behaviors and attributes from our parents, and they did the same thing when they became adults. They took their parents' behaviors and attributes. You know, it's
What's fun about it though? What's fun about it is that you get to see lots of how different traditions are carried out. You know, most people in my block celebrate Christmas or Thanksgiving when I was growing up, but they all did it a little bit differently. There were some similars. There were some, you know, traditional things there that we all kind of did the same way. But then there was like all these other things. And then when I got married, then it was like, I'm not just experiencing these things. I have to meld what I'm bringing and what she's bringing into this whole new thing. And then as a family, we started doing things that both families thought was really weird, because we had to figure out how to meld these things, right? How to kind of, that was the fun part, because it was like, no, we don't do that. So it's like, I'll give you an example. I always let my kids open up one gift on Christmas Eve, but that one gift always had the same damn thing in it. It had pajamas, it had, you know, little candy or snacks, had hot chocolate. And she thought that was so weird. She's like, why are you letting them open up presents on Christmas Eve. I'm like, it's not really a present. We're just giving them their pajamas, and it's a whole thing, right? And we always had to have pizza for some reason. I think that was one of her things. We always had to have pizzas. But it's amazing how you do bring, look, I'm telling you, you do bring so much from your upbringing and you don't recognize it. How many times you've heard somebody say, my God, I'm becoming my father, right? Or,
Get out of my head. I was just thinking about that exact line.
oh my God, I'm becoming my mother, or whatever. We do. So the
And it's funny
ethos,
how much we fight that in our early 20s. And then
we
it just,
do. We do. We don't want to admit that because, we're so angsty and we're so cool and we're so, no, you are your dad, but you're also you. You bring some of your dad with you. And I did for sure. And, in my 20s, I was like, no, hell no, I'm never doing that. I'm never doing that. And then as I get older, I start looking more like him every day, except I might be a little more handsome. I don't know. There's an Easter egg for you, Dad. If you're listening to this show, when you hear this part, send me a message. So the ethos that we are going to really focus in on today is truth. Why is truth a powerful ethos for us here?
because truth is the most necessary component for us to really be able to step back and understand what components of our existence, of our being, of how we show up in the world, came from those before us.
Yeah. Light illuminates. It doesn't condemn, it doesn't judge, it illuminates. And when you shine a light on these things, on these places, these really dark, secret corners, and some of these corners are secret. You may get into your 30s and 40s before someone finally gives you kind of like some of the tea on a family secret, right? Because a lot of these things are kept secret, as we'll get into. As you shine a light on these things, the truth, you're not trying to create more secrets. When we apply truth, we're trying to not erase things. We're trying to allow things to be seen and understood without distortion. And I believe that truth is the first medicine in healing any pain. We have to face it. We have to name it. We have to find the courage to stand up to it and say, as I said in the last episode, hey, enough. It's time to talk about this. It's time to figure this out. You and me, So truth is really important. And of course, the agreement that's going to anchor us today, it has to be family. It has to be
Imagine
family.
that.
Imagine that. Has to be family. You were saying earlier before the show started, you were talking about the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb.
What's like one of the hardest parts of truth within these dynamics is sometimes we don't realize the authority we give our families in our lives. And sometimes those dynamics can be so unhealthy. So we got to be able to be honest with ourselves and ask ourselves, is the involvement and the investment I have here helping or hurting me? Not saying don't be there for your family, but you got to make sure your needs come first.
Yeah. Family is really important here. And yes, you do have to tend to yourself so you can tend to others. That's very important. But when you heal yourself first, you don't have to do it in isolation. And in fact, you probably can't heal very well in isolation. You need people. I need people. We all need people, right? We're all connected. All beings are connected. And we don't just talk about blood here. Family to us is both the water of the womb and the blood of the covenant. And it's up to you in your experience to decide which ones are there and which ones aren't. But when you start this process of healing, you are participating in the healing of a collective body, not just those attached to you generationally, not those just attached to you ancestrally, but those that are attached to you around you, your friends, your chosen family, all of humanity.
What's one of the reasons why connection's so important?
It is.
And
When we
create
throw
and
stones in
choosing
the
your inner
pond,
circle.
when we throw stones in the pond, what happens, right? Consequences aren't just about bad things. There are good consequences too. A ripple is a ripple. Every time we make a splash, we create ripples. And those could be good ripples or bad ripples. Or really, they're just ripples. They're just ripples, right? Because they're going to hit some people in a good way and they're going to hit some people in a not so good way, especially when you're talking about family, especially when you're talking about choosing non-blood related people as your family over blood related people that are your family, right? So it gets really, really crazy there sometimes. And of course, that quote's been mishandled for so long. Blood is thicker than water. That doesn't really cover it, because what that tells us is that blood family is thicker than our chosen family, our friends, or our and not just friends, people we marry. Well, I'm not blood related to Heather, obviously, but she's closer than any family member I have, because she is, you know.
And it doesn't mean that family can't fall on this. And what we're referring to here is, I mean, there are dynamics in families. Is the family member someone who is an active participant in your well-being? Are they someone who's trying to drain the life from you? Is it someone who tries to assert authority and control your actions? Or is it someone who's supportive and loves you?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? There should be no hard feelings. There should be no hard feelings. I know that it's not always that way. People get upset. But every insight you gain, every emotional breakthrough you make, every act of forgiveness is really big here today, Michael. Every act of forgiveness sends those ripples through, and sends those through the pond of connection here. And it sends those vibrations along that web of connection, right? Whichever one you like best, be a pond or a
Well,
web.
not only that, not just outwards, but inwards too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
often I see so many people hold resentment to their family, to their
Yeah.
parents. And it's just like, it breaks my heart to watch this. Because don't get me wrong, in a lot of these situations, their parents weren't great, but they weren't worth condemnation. And that bitterness, that resentment
Yeah.
weighs them down, and they carry it every day like a backpack of rocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that stuff gets heavy. So really, to honor family, to honor this agreement, is to live in the knowing, in the awareness, in the knowing of an interconnected destiny that we all share. We're all connected. We get to choose who's in our circle of trust, and that could be blood or water, right? Doesn't matter. It's whoever brings the most to your life. So we did touch upon real slightly about the difference between these two traumas, these two wounds. And I wanted to make sure that we have a chance to kind of explore the differences for those who don't know one or the other or aren't aware. So one of these is carved by our family stories, our family's histories. And there's one that people believe flows much deeper on the energetic level, creating these vibrations of good stuff and bad stuff. So one is psychological, the other one is more spiritual, if you will. So generational trauma, take us through that, Michael. What is that?
Generational trauma is beliefs, behaviors that have been passed down through generations. It is conditioning and learned behaviors such as a great example, my mother. I love her to death. She is such a people pleaser. It is her very nature, and I grew up watching her do this. And she's always done it for me. And it's something that I have carried into my adult life without even realizing that I just thought I was a good person, which I know I am. But this behavior I learned from my mother watching her growing up. We may not realize it, but when we observe our parents, it's just like love. I think this is one of the places where generational trauma shows up the most. Our caregivers teach us what love looks like,
Mm-hmm.
and also what to accept in relationships.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah. It's basically stuff that's passed on through what we see and what we hear and what we absorb
And how we're
without even
treated.
knowing it.
Yeah.
Right? We just absorb everything. And it lives in these family dynamics. It's in words and attitudes that are repeated over and over and over again. So, yeah, well said. So, ancestral trauma is something, like I said, runs a little deeper. It's energetic, it's collective. It's not necessarily just lineage, it's the people around those people. And so, this one's more often felt than remembered. I don't remember my ancestors. I don't. Do you? I mean, it depends what time period we're talking about, right? I've learned about people that were my ancestors. I've never met any of them, not like we're talking now, right? So, but it seems to have a heaviness that lingers around, and it just passes on. And I'm sure we could get someone on here like Brenda, who probably could break it all down for us and tell us exactly where it comes from, right? But
When I'll say it stores in the nervous system.
it does.
One of the things that has really blown my mind is new research coming out about how it's like if a mother is really anxious and scared while she's pregnant, that child will
Mm,
often come out and be more predisposed to be anxious and scared.
Right.
And these generational traits, whether it was your great 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 grandmother who went through something truly traumatic, that fear, that trauma, that PTSD
Hmm.
passes on through lineages.
It does. Yeah. Like you'll have some inexplicable grief or guilt from something that was done 5 generations previous. And maybe not even just by one person, by a whole group of people created that for another group of people. Someone else's ancestors created that for someone else's ancestors, right? And it's usually something that makes no sense in your current personal story. You're like, what am I doing? Why do I feel so about this? And you will usually come up when you're reading something from history, or you're reading something, or you have dreams, right? And this is pain that, or wounds, or grief, or guilt, or whatever it is that belongs. We feel it, but they belong to stories that we never lived, potentially. Now, sometimes someone's going to say, well, maybe that was a past life. This is something we're talking about, something different. Or unless you were one of your ancestors in a past life, which I guess is totally possible, right? This form of trauma, though, interestingly enough, I've heard people tell me before that this could be caused from like the leftover residue from wars, or leftover from oppression, like I just said, or groups of people being exiled or just wiped out. And again, this isn't something carried only just through the culture and the stories and the history, but it seems to be literally energetically imprinted on us, in our nervous system, maybe even on our souls, man.
No, I completely agree with that.
So there is a bridge between these two, though, right? And we have to really, if we want to integrate our healing, we have to kind of take a look at both. And the goal here isn't to sever us from our lineage or separate us from our families, right? But to transform our relationships to them, to learn to see things clearly, to honor the things that make us, that are great in us and are good in us, and decide, and then we get to decide what continues through us. So in other words, what gets to continue past me now that I'm starting this work, now that I am aware of the things, what am I going to allow to pass on to my kids and hopefully their kids, and so on and so forth?
Well, that's exactly why this work is so important. As we heal these wounds, we understand the bad coping mechanisms that our parents had. The more we can evaluate ourselves and create strategies to become healthier, to become better, especially for our own kids. I know for me, it's like one of the reasons I'm excited to have kids, but also have been waiting, is it's like I'm doing all this healing work and I want to make sure that I empower my kids in a way I wasn't empowered growing.
Yeah, that's something that's passed down through humanity too. We always want to do better for our kids than what was done for us. And that's not a statement of being ungrateful. That
Not at
is
all.
honoring that sacred oath, that sacred unspoken promise, right?
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, my brother and I had it way better than my dad did. And although, especially when we were younger, we would complain, I'm sure. And you will complain until you start having your own kids. And then you're like, well, that's why he did that. Right? That's why.
Right.
Right? And it could be anything, it could be the really frustrating things, or the really fun things, or the really good things. But
Well, and one thing I've pictured a lot with parenting, I'm not a dad, so I can't speak to this, but tell me if this is factual. We talk about often when in stress, we result to our lowest level of healing or lowest level of training.
that's
When
right.
you're a parent in the thick of it, you're most likely going to more often than not fall into that lowest level of healing and training. Again, we want to do the best we can, but man, they're throwing tantrums. They're going crazy, and you got to learn to manage that. And you're not going to be your best self in those moments.
Well, and consider this too, and this is obviously more geared towards moms. This kid was literally wired to you, grew this child, and it was literally wired to your nervous system in a way, not directly, but in a way. So, but beyond that, human beings, we are wired just kind of generally when we hear a crying baby, or when these things are happening, the stress comes up, right? We start getting stressed and anxious by design, because we are so freaking helpless for like the first 3 or 4 years of our life. We literally need people to pick us up off the ground and feed us and clean us and all these things, right? Most animals can just They just pop them out, they clean them off, and then they, kind of smack them in the butt, and they go off and they start eating and stuff by themselves. Not us. We're kind of bougie that way. But so yes, when you start hearing the crying, and it can go on for hours. And when I say hours, I mean hours. They don't know what time it is. They don't care. When they need something, or when sometimes you can't even figure out what they need. You just sit there with them, right? But yes, you get super stressed out, and you fall back to that lowest level of training, as we say, that lowest level of healing, and you forget about making their life better than yours. You do. You really do. You really do, because you're just kind of, and we're wired this way for a reason, so that we can care for our young, so they grow and make more young, and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's nice to say, I just want them to have a better life than I did, and I believe that is our intention. But yes, to answer your question, not when that stuff's going on, because all you can think about is just, okay, what am I not doing right? What is going on? How I can't make this thing stop crying. And sometimes they just cry, just for the hell of it. Some people will say, "Oh, there's always a reason." Well, yeah, you let me know when you find it, because sometimes when you go through the basics, right? Feed them, change them, bathe them, cuddle them, all this and that, and they're still not happy. You burp them, you do all then now you start to go through the Dr. Quinn medicine woman thing, and you're trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Sometimes you just don't know. So you just sit there. You just sit there and hope that it stops at some point.
Yep.
Let's talk about the black sheep. It's a pretty popular thing in culture, wouldn't you say? What what would
Very
you
much
say?
so.
What would you say the black sheep is?
So I think for most people, the black sheep is the family member that stood out. And I don't mean the one who was the overachiever, as much as sometimes they may come out as that.
Right,
But it's often, it could be the troublemaker. It's the one that didn't fit the family mold just right.
right, right. They didn't take
Usually
on
they
their
become the outcast.
exactly. They're often misunderstood, and every family has one, at least one. I've seen some families have more than one, but at least every family at least has one. And they are the misunderstood. They do seem like the outsider, the one that never really fit in, as you said. And here's why they don't. Because they question the family. They question these unspoken rules. They question the secrets. They break traditions. They challenge silence, and they carry with them almost like a sacred duty, whether they know it or not at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we call them the black sheep, as if that's a bad thing. I've never thought that was a bad thing. What if the black sheep isn't the problem? What if the black sheep is the answer to this generational and ancestral pain?
I can believe it. I do think that this also falls into the path the black sheep chooses to take, because
Yeah,
I've seen the black sheep go down one path or the other. They
right.
often carry that rebelliousness from childhood into their adult years and into their as they get older. But the ones that choose to question their reality as well as themselves truly are the ones that make the greatest changes within the dynamics.
They do. They do. And for those, and I think we're going to kind of focus on those, the ones that choose their to the buck stops with me type of thing, right? Enough, it stops with me. They aren't rebels just to be rebels. They truly are trying to put a stop to things that are nonsense. They're trying to bring truth to lies. They're trying to bring healing to pain. And they are typically and this could be a small family unit or a larger family unit, but they're the ones that we would say they awaken, right? They're the ones that usually awaken first. They sense and feel what others just kind of ignore. Like, oh yeah, what was that? What was that movie? Where they say we don't talk about Bruno or whatever, right? We don't talk about
Oh,
Bruno.
yeah, yeah.
Right, right,
Oh,
right.
God, what was that? I know what movie you're talking about, the
Yeah,
Pixar
yeah,
one.
yeah. My kids were older when that movie came out, so I didn't have to watch it 6,000 times. Ask me about The Lion King, I'm all over it, right? But they tend to feel what everybody else is ignoring. They tend to speak their minds, especially when people are saying, hey, don't say that, right? They just kind of sense that something's not right. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we hiding this? Why Why are we not talking about Bruno? They are also the ones that tend to notice the fractures, the small little cracks in the family bonds. Excuse me, because they tend to be more sensitive and more aware. So, what would you say the role of the black sheep is?
I mean, I would say they are the ones who break the generational curses. If they're able to do the reflection, they're able to take, as they resisted against being a part of that dynamic growing up, they question everything. They're the ones who can start setting the boundaries. They're the ones who can start understanding their worth outside of their family dynamics and their values. They're the ones who can start building something new, something stronger, something whole. And often, these black sheep, if they are able to commit to this path, they have ripple effects on their family as they start to see that.
Yeah, yeah, because everybody expects the black sheep to just burst into flames and die. And when they see that they didn't die from it, like, wait a minute, they're still alive. What happened? Maybe I can start doing this too. Um, they are the ones that they're born into these situations. It tends to be this way, I think, where there's these tons of unconscious agreements. We don't talk about that. You heard that a bunch in your family gatherings and stuff. Stop it. We don't talk about that. Or we always forgive and forget. Or we pretend everything's fine.
We didn't have too many secrets within my family, but I'd say the big thing for us was it was always just everything was surface level. There was
Yeah,
no vulnerability. There was no deep connection. There was no general concern for, hey, what's new in your life? How are you doing?
right.
And I think that was one of the things that, as I've gotten to this point, it's like I work on trying to be involved with my family, but I also meet people where they want to meet me
Yeah,
because that's just the program they're operating off of.
right. These people tend to be placed in where they can do the most disruption in a good way, because they never pretend, and they will flat out refuse these unconscious agreements and contracts. They will smash dysfunction into 1,000 pieces, right? And they may create some dysfunction to do that, but they refuse to pretend. They refuse to follow these outdated patterns.
Well, I'd say it's almost like a chain reaction within families. You have this kid who is not following the schema. And when that
Right.
happens, it creates the shadows of the family to come to the surface because all of a sudden the concept of the world around them starts to shatter and ripple. So it's easier to condemn the child than to ask yourself, what am I not seeing about myself or the way I'm showing up in my family?
Right. And that's a perfect segue, because there is kind of a shadow side to being the black sheep. They often feel burdened, misunderstood, rejected, yet somehow they find that purpose inside the pain, and they keep pushing and they keep pushing. And with that comes loneliness, resentment. Sometimes when your light shines too bright on things and reveals too many things, especially to those family units that have grown comfortable in the dark, as it were, right? It really makes other people uncomfortable, and they will fight for that comfort. They'll fight almost to the death for it. And they will do whatever they can to label you a bunch of things just so it takes the spotlight off of them. But the shadow here, there is a shadow here, but there's a gift and illumination, would you say? These kind of people, whether we call them black sheep or not, that's just a popular way, I think, to it just sounds like a cool word. Well, maybe, I don't know. The word doesn't matter. These people were never meant to fit the mold, and they never are going to fit the mold, even if they go the opposite way, as you were talking about earlier. They're never going to fit the mold, and they have the power to transform it, because they're the ones that really, they're like, I don't care. I don't care. This isn't right. I don't care. We shouldn't do this. I don't care. Why are you holding these secrets? I don't care. Why are we not talking about Bruno?
Right. Well, I think kind of like you're saying, that when it brings up the shadows, that means the light's being shined.
That's right.
And the reason it can be so beneficial for families is because as the years go on and that light is there, it gives the people in the family a chance to really look at themselves. When they would often be able to stay in there, it's like being in the matrix, right? They're in the world, everything's fine, but then they see a glitch. And there's
Mm,
their chance to break free, to take that red pill and see reality for what it is and start healing themselves.
Right, right. And love and the ethos of love and truth here are really important for the black sheep, because if we don't have truth in our love, it enables. We are just enabling people. Love without truth is enabling. Truth without love is cruelty. So, and together they create this balance that we're really going to need here. And the black sheep heals not just themselves, but generationally, potentially, if they're, if they carry a lot of power with them, by standing in truth, not in judgment, by saying this, it is what it is. This is what happened, and I'm choosing to try and heal it. But it also requires a lot of courage, doesn't it? Would you consider yourself the black sheep of your family?
I was a black sheep in my own way. It wasn't really until these last couple of years as I've started to really question how I've shown up, because I very much carried my family's patterns. Like, I look at, if I wouldn't have started this journey, I would have been my mother as a father.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I always sort of never fit the mold of the life I led. And as far as like a lot of my family, my brothers being 20 years older, they had a completely different mother growing.
Right, of course.
So my mother was very overprotective of me. I had a lot of coddling going on growing up.
Yeah,
And it took me sort of sifting through it because I always had an awareness. I did always have a high level of awareness, like you're talking about. I always questioned things. But it wasn't until I started really getting into healing that I start questioning the right things.
yeah,
A lot of it was, this is just who I am. This is just, this is how I'm wired. These insecurities, that's just a part of me.
yeah. I've certainly been called the black sheep by lots of people.
I believe it.
I mean, it is what it is. Time will tell if I was effective or not, I guess. I don't know. I don't really concern myself with trying to fit in a mold, even a mold of the black sheep, because I'm just here to fulfill a purpose. And I can just hope that I'm successful in some small measure, right? And so, but I have been called that many times.
I always tried to be a black sheep when it came to society. My motto, I remember in third grade, I made my motto: if you blend in, you fade out.
That's an interesting thought. Do you still believe that?
Oh, very much so. I
Yeah.
look at how so many people get into this conforming thinking, the same, even with a lot of the people I work with. I mean, they all orbit around the same spheres of interest and everything, and it
Hmm.
makes them all very similar.
But when you go out of your way to be different, just for the sake of being different, aren't you kind of masking there too?
I think it's possible for some people to wind into that. I've met a lot of those unconforming conformists. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah.
But for me, it was always, I was interested in what I was interested in. And that was something that always, I think, made me magnetic with people, because I was never afraid to express what I was interested in, even if no one else knew what it was.
Yeah.
And it was something that I very much enjoyed about myself, because it always made me very unique in the world. But I wonder, I've never considered that was a mask within itself, because it could have been.
Balance in all things, right? Balance in all things. If you authentically, I guess the question was really alluding to, if we have to force something, are we being authentic? Maybe you're just authentically different, and that's
And phrasing it like that, then I am definitely authentically me,
there you
because
go.
there's no force involved. And that is so
Right.
true, because again, it's not only fitting the mold, but trying to fit into a different mold.
You're trying to make a mold that's so different that, but just for the sake of forcing yourself to look different, just be you. I promise you, if each of you out there just be you, you're going to be different. It's just going to happen already. So before we get into how do we start to heal from these things, I do want to say just real quick, there is a moment where those of us who are aware, there is a turning point. And for me, it was as I got older, I started to realize, and I even told my dad this. I said, I said to him, you know, there were times where I didn't understand why you did the things you did. And it took listening to stories from my mom about the kind of man my dad is. And and then getting to that age where he was at that time, at that point in time, to realize, wow, you know what? Now I understand. I understand why some of these things carried through, and they weren't bad things. They weren't bad things at all. So, because he did create a better life for us, he did. We did not have to deal with not even 1% of the things that he had to endure. So, I just wanted to throw that out there. I mean, sometimes this progression does happen naturally in a way by opening up our awareness and giving us clarity to things. So I just want to throw that out there. So let's talk about healing the generational wound. This segment was handcrafted by an artisan, me, for you, because nobody can explain this better than you that I know of. So how do we begin once we've achieved some clarity and we've achieved some awareness, and now we're ready to say, you know what? Buck stops with me. Where do we start there?
Well, I guess it depends first on what is the generational trauma that's been passed down in your family. What are the toxic things in your family? It could be things like abuse. It can be things like people pleasing. It can be enmeshment, which I think is one of the biggest things so many people struggle with when they're in
Explain,
these type of dynamics.
explain that for folks who don't know what that is.
So enmeshment is where there's not really any line between who your family is and who you are. They're enmeshed together where there's if your family needs you, you are right there. Yet, and that's not a bad thing until it starts pushing into the territory of getting in the way of your needs, your progress, your success. And again, this doesn't mean I'm busy right now, I don't have time for you, but it means being able to assert boundaries. It means being able to figure out where your family ends and you begin,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're starting your own family.
Especially when you're starting your own family, because that really, really muddies the waters, doesn't it? This is why it's so very important to understand the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It doesn't mean better, but it does help us understand how to navigate those muddy waters, because you are now creating a whole new family together, and both of you are bringing stuff with you, right?
You know, one of the
So
ways I heard someone phrase it before I got married, and it stuck with me, is it's like, once you get married, that is your immediate family. Everything else is your external family. This is your immediate family, is you, your spouse, and the family you are creating.
yes, yes. And let me tell you something. As both a father and a son, I truly understand both of these things. I truly, truly do, because I've even said to my own kids, listen, you got to do what's best for your family. Is it a weird thing for a father or a mother to have to be placed in a spot where I was their world, and now all of a sudden I am extended family? Is that a weird place to be? Really, really is. I was close to my girls. I am close to my girls, but I am not in the same position that I was in, because now they have families and they must do what's best for their family, not what's best for dad. And that gets really weird, but it's, you can navigate that. You really can, because what you're doing is you have people in your life that's your family unit, and they are the most important people in the world for most of us, right? Until you get married, or marriage isn't necessary here, but until you begin your own family. And that could be just simply
Moving away.
moving away and starting a dynamic with someone else. And now those people that were your whole world, and they're most important people in your life, now other people are starting to go in front of them. Your own children, right? Your own children. So it is a really, really interesting thing. And I can tell you, it's a very uncomfortable place to be at times, right? You know, my youngest now is starting to branch out into the world, and all of her sisters have done this already. And it's like, and now I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wow, this is the last one. What do I do now? Because I can always fall back. Oh, well, I still have more. I still have more. I still have more. But now I don't.
Yep.
But the interesting thing is, then if they have children, now you have grandchildren, and your children will say to you at times, because mine all have, wow, wow, you love my kids more than you love me. You love your grandkids more than you love me. And it's like, so true sometimes, because I can take them and I can give them back to you when I'm done with them. I was stuck with you.
Necessary part for no matter your dynamic, because what it is it's reteaching your nervous system what is safe and what is acceptable. Again, when we talk about like enmeshment, you know, we can have parents or siblings who blame, shame, guilt trip, do all they can to get as much emotional reaction from you as possible.
Yeah.
And when you're used to putting up with that your whole life, you have to do a whole bunch of inner child work to start teaching your nervous system, teaching that inner child that it wasn't okay that they had to deal with that and that they're not going to have to deal with it anymore. Same goes with the people pleasing, where you're constantly bending over backwards to support everyone in your life and you're drowning because you're not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's being able to retrain your inner child and say, "Hey, I can help them when I can help them, but I need to put myself first right now." Because this stuff's uncomfortable. I always associate inner child work with the nervous system because that's how it talks to us. And we got to be able to teach ourselves that it is safe to act differently than we have before.
Therapy and somatic work. Very important,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, that's how
Because
you
as you said,
purge this stuff out of your system.
it lives in your nervous system. And this is, you're right. That's how you flush out the toxin. That's how you, that's the actual work to start to rebuild that nervous system.
Yeah. Another big one is authentic communication. If we got to be able to have those hard conversations, we got to be able to discern where people are at and what's going on, but we have to be able to advocate for ourselves, advocate for our needs, and place those boundaries. We got to be able to speak our truth even when it is uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can tell you, being on the other end of that, one of my children went and got therapy. And I think this is why older people like my age, and older, shy away from therapy because they feel like all the person's going to do is blame your parents. But being on the parent end of a kid who went to therapy, and of course, they always ask you about these things we're talking about. Very uncomfortable for me to hear, right? Because I did the best I could. I did the best I could with what I had, and but as uncomfortable as that is, it is very, very important. Very important. And ask me if I push back a little bit.
I'm sure you do.
I did. I did. A little bit. A little bit, because no one wants to hear that they were a shitty parent. No one wants to feel like they're being blamed for doing their best.
But it
But
can
it
make
is,
such a difference. I remember going to my
does.
dad. I remember going to my dad, and I'm trying to remember what the conversation was about. I think it was about how he always joked about the work I was doing was half-assed, and I used to take it so personally because he would say it sarcastically half the time. I remember building a patio for him when I was 15, and he would go out there and measure the bricks and see that they were level one by one,
Mm.
and he'd be like, "Ah, yeah, you half-assed this job," and then. But years later,
We
I
just did a
told him
show
it.
about that.
Yeah, right. But years later, I told him, it's like, man, that really messed with my self esteem. That really messed with my character because I didn't know you were joking. I always took
Yeah.
what you said so seriously,
Right.
and it really impacted me and my work ethic. And like, he got emotional, he cried, we hugged, and I told him, it's like, I'm not saying this to blame you. I'm not saying this because I'm judging you or did a bad job. You did a great job as a dad. This was just something I have to get off my chest so I can make peace with.
Yeah. I've been confronted by my children before, telling me that, in not in so many words, that I wasn't the best dad at times. And that's really hard to hear. Especially, and now here's the thing, on this side of it, especially since I am nowhere near the same dude I was 15 years ago. I am not that same person. So for me, what it felt like was, okay, I'm not being attacked. That dude's being attacked. But that dude's not here to defend himself. So what do I really care? Right? At the end of the day, I care about giving them the space to let me have it, whatever, right? But I can't take it personally because I'm not that guy's dead. That guy's been dead for a long time because I am clearly a much different person than I was then. It's why I'm probably I'm probably a better grandparent in a lot of ways than I was a dad
I
because it's a
feel that
whole.
happens quite often.
I think that's very common. So and take this however you will, but it almost seems like you get a second chance at being a parent to your kids when you have grandkids, right? You get a second chance, but now you're in a much better place financially. Now you're in a much better place as far as stability. You're much older and wiser, right? And you probably are in a lot of ways a better caregiver at that point than you were 15 years prior or 20 years prior, whatever it is. So, but this authentic communication, do your best to try to make it about communication and not confrontation. But you're going to get some pushback. Even I pushed back a little bit at first because I'm like, whoa, that wounded me, dude. That was like deep. You just cut me to the bone. And then it was like, well, what do I give a shit? I'm not that guy anymore. So whatever I can do to create that space so that they can get it off their chest, right? We'll talk shit about that guy together. We'll just pile on that dude over there, my old self, because it really, at the end of the day, you know, if it's true, it's true. And I'm not going to defend the actions of somebody that I was 15 years ago. All I can do is just own it. Say, you know what?
But even then, for those going through that right now with their kids being older, is it's like it's never a matter of what you did as a parent. I mean, yes, there are definitely certain degrees of what you did that impacted them.
In
But
certain
again, all this
circumstances,
stuff
like
is
if you
how we.
were, well, and I'll just say, in certain circumstances, if you were smacking them around all the time, yeah, you know what? You need to be handled. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But it's all about how things were interpreted by the child. For instance, me, I was very much taught it was not safe to advocate for myself. The way that came about was my parents having no ill will, no controlling nature. It was just I had a sister who was out of hand, and the best way they told me to deal with it was take the high road. It's not worth trying to fight against it. So I never got to learn boundaries. I never got to learn space. And it was them trying to keep the peace. So often it's all about how the child interprets the events in their life and the parenting and the whole situation. Because trauma is never a matter of what happens, it's how we internalize it.
yeah. So this healing is basically the psychological path, but where we add action to things, right? Where we're taking action through these different modalities, and you may not need all of them, and there may be a lots more that we didn't discuss today. But whatever it is that you need to do, seek out teachers, seek out counselors and mentors, and or whatever you need to get through this. But you have to take action. This is about action. This part, the healing requires action, as we always say. The doors of opportunity to healing open all the time naturally, but you have to step through them, and sometimes that's really uncomfortable. So I don't have a
Be
lot to say
consistent
about
with it.
be consistent and practice, practice, practice. You've been slacking on that lately, by the way. I
And
haven't
I
heard you
realized it
think.
as soon as I said that.
I usually the ones that say practice, practice, practice. See, I gotta pick up the slack around here. But there
Trauma.
isn't. I'm not going to really get too much into healing of these ancestral wounds because it really comes down to different factors. Culture, beliefs, and things like that. It's really impossible for me to kind of list a generic healing for this. But what I would encourage you to do is connect with your ancestors, get to know them, get to know their story, get to know why, where, when, how, really investigate, right? Generational stuff, you lived through that. This ancestral stuff, you really have to kind of put on your Sherlock Holmes hat and just investigate and learn about the people that came long before you, but are really the reason why you're here. So I think
Well,
that's
one thing I
fair
just
enough.
got to add to that, and this works for generational trauma too. I know for me, it's like one of the things my dad did is he always wanted me to get in sports. He always wanted me to be successful in school, and he never had any interest in what I was doing. And I took that really personally, especially as I started healing. I'm like, wow, he didn't care about my interests at all. That was not good. So I got curious and I started asking questions. And it turned out that my grandfather, who was an amazing man and was a great father, wanted to provide everything for his to his son. But in doing so, he was more obsessed with giving his kid everything he wanted than seeing the successes of my dad. And my dad, to get his father's approval, played all the sports, was the valedictorian. He did everything he could to be to make his father proud. And
Yeah,
so his trauma, the ancestral trauma to the generational trauma, was him putting on me then, I'm going to have you do all the things I did to make my father proud so I can be proud of you.
yeah,
And this wasn't conscious, but it was just having that curiosity and learning taught me so much. So never be afraid to ask questions. Learn about your great
right.
grandparents.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, and there and theirs and theirs. I love going through ancestry stuff, and I love learning the names and learning the lives as much as I can. It gets really hard once you get, 100 years ago. It gets really difficult then. But considering our country isn't very old, then you really have to go back into, overseas somewhere, unless your entire family was here the whole time, which is possible. But I didn't really want to tell people how to heal from that because I don't know your ancestors. I don't know where you come from. But, put on your investigator hat and learn as much as you can. That's one way to honor them. Learn their traditions. Learn about these different things. And maybe you'll start to see where some of that stuff crossed down generationally too. So I've been able to go back roughly to 1300 and something. I have a feeling anything beyond that will be very, very difficult. By then I won't know names or anything. I'll just be able to know where they were chilling out at. You know what I mean?
Right.
So Michael, do you have any closing thoughts today for our episode?
Healing isn't easy. And when it comes to family dynamics, it's one of the hardest things to start creating change in. I remember when I first started getting into setting boundaries, and I asked, like, where's the best place to start? Do I do it with my family? And they're like, no. When you have family, the people who are closest with you are the ones who are going to push back the most when you start asserting your needs. Now, this is not me telling you not to start with your family, because you gotta know where your family ends and you begin. And you got to start being able to assert these boundaries, but start small. Figure out where there are unhealthy patterns within your family dynamic and start putting little boundaries in place or having little conversations to start cultivating the process of healing these wounds. Start advocating for yourself. Start putting your needs first. So this takes time. This takes practice. This is not something that's going to change overnight. But if you are a black sheep, you are someone who has the true capacity to make lasting change from here on out. But it all starts with the first step. Just make it a step and not a leap, because it's all in the little steps we take that real change happens.
And even if you don't consider yourself a black sheep, I want you guys to understand each of you have the power to turn this thing around. You have the power to say, this does not go past me. Right? Because those who you have influence over, whether you bear children or sire children or whatever, those that come after you and your boundaries and your protection of those that come after you, they could be your nieces, your nephews, your whatever. They could be your children. They will inherit the freedom instead of pain because of you. Right? You can be the breath that breaks the silence and questions the norms. You can be that bridge between the wounds and the pain and the healing. And I just want to remind everyone out there, your healing is not isolated. It's not just, you may be doing it for you, but I promise you it will ripple out and back and out, further forward and backwards in time than you even imagine. Touching generations not even born yet. Every act of courage, every act of forgiveness, every choice to be compassionate reforms the lineage little by little. Maybe you're not the one that completely heals things, but I promise you, you will inspire someone that comes after you somewhere to pick up your work and continue on. You can be the turning point, though, in your family story. Axiom of light, good often comes in its own time. Do not spend time trying to hurry it, for you will only waste time. As Michael said, this is not a race. Be patient. Healing these wounds, it can't be rushed. It will never work. These processes and this art of healing works in quiet and subtle ways sometimes. And sometimes it takes generations to see. You may be planting a tree that you'll never get to lay under and enjoy the shade of, right? So just keep at it. Be the one who ends this. Try to be the one who bridges the healing with the pain. You can be the healed ancestor. You can be that one that everybody talks about long after you're gone. So I broke the affirmations up today into three groups. So you guys get bonus affirmations today. So the affirmations for generational healing: I release the unconscious patterns that no longer serve love or peace. I have the power to choose differently than those before me. I bring awareness, compassion, and truth to my family story. I am the calm in the storm that once ruled my lineage. My courage to heal creates ripples of light in every direction of time. For the ancestral healing, our affirmations. I honor those who come before me, knowing they did the best they could with what they had and what they knew. I send healing light through the roots of my lineage, dissolving fear, shame, and pain. I walk in the strength of my ancestors' wisdom, not their suffering. I forgive the past, and in doing so, I set my lineage free. I am the healed ancestor my future descendants will thank. And for you black sheep out there, I didn't forget about you. I am not the outcast. I am the bridge between shadow and light. My difference is divine design. My difference is by divine design. I was born to bring change. I carry the courage to transform pain into wisdom. I walk my own path with compassion, not resentment. I am the awakening my family never expected, but always needed. So our journaling prompts, I have 3 for each of these too. So you guys get, I know how much you love journaling prompts. You guys are going to get some extra ones today. For generational healing, what patterns, beliefs, or fears do I notice repeating in my family? How have I unconsciously mirrored my parents or caregivers? And where can I choose differently? In what ways can I show compassion for those who hurt me, while still honoring my boundaries? For ancestral healing, when I reflect on my ancestors, what emotions or sensations arise within me? What would I say to my ancestors if I could speak directly to them? How can I honor their sacrifices while freeing myself from their pain? For the black sheep, when have I felt misunderstood or isolated for being different? How can I shift from resentment to gratitude for my unique role in my lineage? What would it mean for me to fully embrace being the healer in disguise? If I could rewrite my family story through the light, what would it sound? Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. I certainly did, as always. Michael, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Like, is he frozen? Wow. Rude. Make sure you check out our socials. Facebook. What do we got? Facebook, TikTok, Instagram,
YouTube,
YouTube, TikTok,
newashla.com. Best website ever.
It is the best site ever. It's getting better and better. You guys need to check it out every week because I do stuff in there and it looks different. And you're going to be like, I see what he did this week. So we are
And
adding
if you want help exploring the shadow, you can join us on there.
That's right.
Reach out.
Reach out. So we love you guys. Have a great, it'll be 4 days before we see you again. Have a great week. With love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.